Welcome to the complete animation of Z from The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. I think that is probably one of the biggest mouthfuls of a title that I've seen in a long time. It is The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. That is the title of the film. And so yeah, this movie is kind of weird. Had a troubled development. For one thing, Blue Sky got shut down. Like the studio that makes Ice Age got shut down. And apparently, this was supposed to be a series, but then they decided that they were going to just make it into a movie. And here we have this movie. It and it doesn't live up to the rest of the Ice Age franchise. It's not even as good as Collision Course, and that is saying something because Collision Course was not great. And it's also really weird that this is the first movie that even acknowledges the first movie's existence. It's like there's the first movie, and then the second, third, fourth, and fifth ones had basically nothing to do with the first movie, except for the characters of Manny, Sid, and Diego. Besides those three characters, and the fact that they became friends by the end of the first movie, the other movies had nothing to do with them. Except for all of a sudden, this movie decided that in its, beginning recap of other things, it was going to mention that. But then there's so much other stuff that it didn't talk about in the recap. Didn't talk anything about Shira, didn't say anything about basically the entire movie of Collision Course. In fact, I should probably rewatch I should probably rewatch that thing and see if it even mentioned Peaches. Because Peaches was a huge part of the third movie, which is where this movie gets its setting from. She was a massive part of the fourth movie and the fifth movie. It's she's a character that was basically integral to more than half of the franchise, and she's just not even in here. And speaking of characters that aren't even in here, Scrat. But yeah, so long story short, this movie feels like it's kind of picking and choosing a weird bit of the Ice Age franchise to focus on. And I really don't think that making Crash and Eddie main characters was a good idea. I can't remember exactly what video it was, but he talked about basically why the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie is a perfect masterpiece in every way, shape, and form. And he made a really good point that characters that are, bit crazy and mostly comic relief, like Captain Jack Sparrow, they shine as being secondary characters. It just so happens that having, more normal, straight-faced characters be the main characters is good, and then having the absolute nuts be secondary characters. And then when you make a movie where the nut becomes a main character, oftentimes it just doesn't work. See the fourth and fifth Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I'm not saying those are bad movies, but making Captain Jack Sparrow the main character didn't really work that well for it, and making Crash and Eddie the main characters of this movie also kind of does that. And also Buck Wild, he is also kind of in that archetype. And so, yeah. And speaking of Buck, it's no small, secret that Buck Wild is probably one of the best, like, crazy nut characters to come out in this franchise, because it's but the third Ice Age movie, I still think that it's the best out of the not, first Ice Age movies. And Buck really just sold that movie. And his relationship with Crash and Eddie worked really well in that movie. And when you think about, all that this movie tries to accomplish and how Buck and Crash and Eddie work together in that movie, and how, like, during the climax, their scene was actually really fun, where they were flying on a pterodactyl and, shooting things at the other creatures, flying after them. It makes you wonder why this movie even did what it did. Because if you want that, you can get all of it and more in a much better movie just by rewatching Ice Age 3, Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs is a really good movie, and almost everything that this movie does, that movie does better. It looks better because it had a higher budget. Like, when did it come out? 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And it looks better than this. In fact, as far as straight to video, 3D animated movies go, I think that last year's Rock Dog 2 had better visuals than this. Like, if you've been paying attention to the visuals here, it's sort of mishmashed. Like, the fur effects do look pretty good, but the ground texture is really flat. Textures everywhere are pretty flat, and the lighting is pretty flat, and the actual movement of the characters is kind of choppy. I think Rock Dog 2 from last year, which, was a direct-to-video sequel of a movie that had middling success at the box office from 2016. Like, Rock Dog 2 had better visuals than this. But yeah, let's talk about this character, Z. She was basically made to sort of be a complement to Buck. Someone who lives in the same world that he does and is equally skilled in it. In fact, so, like, the movie shows that they used to be part of a team that worked to, keep harmony between the small amount of mammals that live down here and the large number of dinosaurs. And she, like, it's kind of weird. She's competent. She's skilled, she's athletic. It's like, yeah, she's, strong female character. And I think that they did a really interesting thing where it's like she and Buck have, like, there's, like, no romance between them. It's like that's nothing that the movie even hints to. They're just friends and they used to work together. And then when the rest of their team died, they had a falling out. And in that way, I think that this is actually a pretty, reasonable character. It's not like, the moment you saw She-Ra, you knew, oh, so this is the lady friend for Diego. Like, you kind of get that feeling when you first see her, but, like, it never goes anywhere with it. And the only thing I can think is this character, she kind of works. And I kind of wish that, she had her debut in a better movie. But let's talk about, like, the entire quality of this movie. I'm not going to say that this movie is bad, because when I watched it through it the first time, and then when I watched it, as I've been, really analyzing the footage as I've, made this video, it, like, I don't think it's bad. I think that there is a lot to enjoy here. But I'm also not going to say that this movie is great. Um, and like the other people who are less charitable than me will just dismiss this as a bad movie. People who care a whole lot more about the story and the characters than I do. People who aren't, enamored with the art of animation itself. Like, I could definitely see them not liking it. In fact, if you look at the reviews right now, like, basically everybody's tearing this movie a new one and lamenting the fact that Blue Sky is now gone and that the people that worked on this, like, some of them might have been part of Blue Sky, but if they were, they're probably, crying their hearts out working on this because, they could have spent more time and money to make it better, and what we have now is not great. But I guess the question to ask is, was it a good or bad thing that this movie was made? And I don't think that the answer can be as quite as black or white as yes or no, but I think that leaning more towards the yes side is the answer. Like, I think that this movie doesn't really, pay proper tribute to the rest of the franchise. But, like, if you really think about it, by the end of the fifth movie, Collision Course, this whole franchise kind of bloated. Because, like, all three main characters at the end of that movie had their, lady friends / wives. And, one of them had a child, which also had, grown up and gotten married because, like, Peach's wedding was the big thing in there. So, maybe it was the right choice to sort of cut back in here. But there was one sentiment that I do agree with. If you're going to make a movie called The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, you should start the movie with Buck. Buck should be the main character. And Crash and Eddie should not be the main characters. Like, it'd be nice if the titular character of the movie was the main character of the movie. Yeah. So, overall, I wouldn't blame anyone for not liking this movie. I found plenty to enjoy. I think this Z character is pretty neat. Wish she had a better movie to be a part of. But yeah, thanks for watching.